Prince Harry's memoir has been tipped to be released by the end of 2022, in time for the lucrative Christmas market. Last month, it was reported the finishing touches were being put to the Duke of Sussex's book, which has been promised to be a wholly truthful account of his life. Speculation surrounding the content has been abound since the announcement was made last summer. While some believe Harry will use it to launch another attack on the royal family, others believe he will focus on different elements of his life. Tom Sykes, the Daily Beast's royal correspondent, claimed the Duke of Sussex could use the book to talk about his past, with a focus on his wild years when the prince was hard partying. He told last week's episode of the Royally Us podcast that Harry is likely to avoid using his memoir to launch an attack on the royal family and will instead focus very much on himself. Mr. Sykes said, "For me, the really fascinating thing about it is he going to talk about his partying? Is he going to talk about drug use? I think it is a real possibility. I think that, to me, would be the most brilliant way for Harry to answer all his critics and provide an amazing book, but also not be accused of sticking it to other people." Harry not welcomed by Anne and Sophie Wessex at Philip's funeral. Unearthed accounts Prince Harry was not welcomed by Princess Anne and Sophie Wessex at the funeral of Prince Philip last year, according to a royal expert. The Duke of Edinburgh's funeral came just a month after Meghan and Harry sat down for their bombshell interview with Oprah Winfrey. Why was Prince Harry allegedly not welcomed at the funeral? Find out. Mr. Sykes added, "I struggle to see what else gives it the worth of $1 million when frankly you can have any number of people the story of Harry. So what is it that gives it that enormous credibility? Harry was known as the rebel prince during his younger years and has admitted to experimenting with alcohol and drugs. His rebellious side saw Harry caught up in controversies, insensitive fancy dress costumes, nightclub outbursts and that infamous trip to Las Vegas." Mr. Sykes explained, "Harry was very hard partying in his youth, he drank a lot, he partied a lot. His girlfriend Chelsea Davy and him were very hard partying in London up until 10 when they split up. They were just on the scene in London, you would see them in nightclubs." The Duke of Sussex has opened up about his alcohol and drug use at this time, saying that it was to mask the pain of his mother Diana, Princess of Wales' death. Last year, Harry talked about his struggles with mental health and the trauma that he lives with during the Apple TV Plus documentary, The Me You Can't See. He said he was never given the space or time to mourn his mother's death, so eventually tried drinking and drugs to numb the pain. Harry admitted, "I was willing to drink, I was willing to take drugs, I was willing to try and do the things that made me feel less like I was feeling. But I slowly became aware that, okay, I wasn't drinking Monday to Friday, but I would probably drink a week's worth in one day on a Friday or a Saturday night. And I would find myself drinking, not because I was enjoying it but because I was trying to mask something." At the age of 17, Harry was reportedly sent to rehab by his father Prince Charles. St. James's Palace later confirmed that the prince had experimented with the drug on several occasions, but said he was not a regular user. In May 21, Harry appeared on the Armchair Expert podcast, during which he and host Dax Shepard had a frank discussion about the Hollywood star's own drug and alcohol use. The Duke asked Mr. Shepard whether he had an awareness of what sparked his use of drugs as a teenager. He continued, "For you, it was your upbringing and everything that happened to you, the trauma, pain and suffering. All of a sudden you find yourself doing a load of drugs and partying hard. Look how many other people do that as well. They wouldn't have the awareness at the time. I certainly wouldn't have had the awareness when I was going wild. It's like, why am I actually doing this? In the moment it's like, I'm in my it's what you're supposed to." Mr. Sykes referenced this conversation on the Royally Us podcast, telling hosts Christine Ross and Christina Garibaldi it would feel weird if a large portion of Harry's book was not dedicated to that chapter of his life.